Don Everly, and now Charlie Watts. Two of my favorite all-time people in the rock and roll industry. What's the world coming to, eh? I guess I ain't long for it either, eh? And we all gotta go. My favorite story about Charlie, I mean, one thing I always loved about Charlie is not only was he a sharp dresser, but he was no posturing about the guy, right? There was none of that phony shit, I'm a star, all that kind of crap. His ego didn't get inflated and get huge like so many of the other rockers, including Mick and Keith and anybody else on the Stones, eh? Uh, I mean, he was married to the same woman for 57 years. That's a solid dude. Through thick and thin, that's a solid dude right there. My favorite story about the guy is, this is after they're well into their career and they're touring someplace, and Keith's got a hotel room, and in those days they all stayed at separate places, eh? And Keith used to sort of hang out with the roadies, but the other Stones, no. But anyhow, Keith's over at his place, his hotel room, and Mick comes over, and they're talking and rapping, and Mick at this time, this was after he signed that deal to make the movie, and a special, he sort of screwed the Stones by signing a contract so that he could make some solo albums. Anyhow, they weren't kind of happy with him, and they all forgave each other and all that kind of nonsense. But anyhow, so Mick's over at Keith's place, acting, the big shot and all of that kind of stuff, and they're talking what they're going to do, this and that and all of that, and Keith decides to call up Charlie and ask him a question or two about this or that, about the tour or whatever it was he wanted to ask him. And anyhow, Mick's all, being Mick and all of that, and he yells over at the phone, "Tell my drummer to get over here," like that, right? Charlie hears this, and Keith says the phone hung up. 20 minutes later, there's a knock at Keith's door. Keith goes to the door and opens up the door, and there's Charlie dressed in, one of his Savile Row suits, looking sharp and dapper like he always was, and he stands there and he says, anyhow, I want to see Mick. Mick comes over to him, and Charlie gives him the old right cross and knocks him down and says, "Don't you ever call me your drummer ever again." Turned around and walked out. That's sort of more or less how the story went. And that's one thing I loved about Charlie. Keith was that way too. That's why I liked Keith. Good old Charlie. Rip Charlie Watts.
Born in London in 1941, he discovered jazz in his early teens and then in his early 20s a rock band called the Rolling Stones. But even when it became a global touring machine, the dapper drummer never looked for the spotlight.
It's not ageism to say that it's tough to picture our rock stars at the age of 80. Yet that is how old Charlie Watts was when he died today in a British hospital. You don't often hear rock drummers universally described by their peers as elegant, stylish, or gentlemanly, or meticulous. Yet that was Charlie Watts. On stage, while Keith and Mick tore it up, Charlie toned it down. He always played a basic, old-school four-piece kit. His posture was perfect. His bearing was much more like a professor at the London School of Economics. Charlie Watts was indelible, instantly recognizable. His role in rock and roll history is enshrined forever. It was never in doubt. If the Beatles changed the world, the Stones taught it how to dance. And all the while, through the decades and on 30 albums, Charlie Watts kept the time. He drove the band. A quiet man who spoke with his sticks, and with those two pieces of wood in his hands, he spoke volumes and left us anthems to mark our time together here on Earth.
Because Charlie was a rock and a fantastic drummer.
Charlie Watts.
There's no word on whether the Rolling Stones will move forward, but Watts' signature sound, that swinging backbeat, will continue resonating as long as their music is played. Eli Glasser, CBC News.